Good afternoon. It's Thursday, May the 30th, and this is meteorologist Shay Gibson with SailFlow. I'm bringing you a preliminary forecast for the Helly Hansen World Regatta Series. This is the Detroit Local Knowledge and Weather Brief brought to you by Quantum Sales. So myself, with Libby and some of the team from Quantum will be on this call. So let me go ahead and share a screen real quick, kind of take a peek at the slide deck that we're going to be viewing over the next couple of days. I'm not going to run the deck itself or the slideshow. I'm just going to kind of briefly go through. It looks like we got Bora Galari, Ben Peters, Dave Gerber, myself, Chris Werner, and then anybody else that wants to join in from the Quantum Sales team. It'll be a good group of people joining us for the races starting tomorrow morning at 10, 10:30, or 10, and then the fast 10:30, and then Saturday and Sunday as well. So the housekeeping rules, if you're going to have any questions or comments, you can put those in the chat box. Sailing forecast, of course, we'll be changing this to reflect the Pesh Point sensor, and we'll get over that in just a minute. We'll be talking about the overview river currents, some of the breeze in the lake, and here are the racing areas to be discussed in pretty good detail, with A, B, and C, with C, of course, being a little farther in towards Pesh Island, where the current's going to be a little stronger on that side. I'm sure we'll be touching on those topics day to day. So I'm not even going to bring up the tide information chart because it really just the current goes from northeast to southwest across the lake. And funnels into the Detroit River. So let's go ahead and just kind of dive into the forecast real quick. And right now we have clear skies. There's really not a lot going on. I mean, we have an easterly wind, a modest east wind across Lake St. Clair, and really no clouds to discuss. Really high pressures in control. We have high pressure centered over the Great Lakes right now. So pretty dry, cooler air moving in right now at 500 millibars at 18,000 feet up. We have north winds at about 35, 40 knots, maybe 45 here and there, but basically it's pretty solid geostrophic flow from north to south all the way down with a surface east flow as that lake breeze occurs off St. Clair from the east and to the west. So with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the surface map. Get my draw tool handy. And right now we have this high pressure right here, large and in charge. So around this high pressure is the clockwise motion, right? So that's the general direction of wind. So right now we have this northerly wind around the center, and it's now since curved a little bit more from the east, right? As we get that little bit of a lake breeze effect off of that, right? Some of the heat fluxing and the land masses near it, but also simply because high pressure is also extended up this way and bringing east flow around it as well. So where this H is exactly in the middle does not necessarily mean where the center truly is. It's just a reference point from a model forecast. But as we go into tonight and into tomorrow, this high pressure is going to be moving off to the east, right? So we know that exiting from this area and over to the east with that clockwise motion brings up a southerly draw. So I do think by tomorrow we'll be looking at probably more of a southeasterly flow or south-southeast flow around that high. As far as speeds go, we'll have to get that in just a moment with some of the model forecasts, but I think we'll be able to get modest speeds out of it. The farther away we are from the absolute center of high pressure, the better off we're going to be for winds. If this center is right overhead, then all bets are off. It's going to be light and variable, and then it ends up being a really, really tough forecast. But I think by Friday, this is going from OZ Friday to OZ Saturday, basically we want to make sure that we're covering for the right day here. But either way, the high pressure is going to slowly move off to the east in time, where we end up with Saturday's winds a little bit more south-southeast. Might even see some southerly flow draw around that high pressure, but there's also going to be some frontal activity moving in as we get into Saturday. Now, I don't think it's going to impact the race during the race times between 10 and 2 or 3, but I think later in the day and the evening, we got a low pressure moving up across the Midwest and up over the Ohio Valley and towards this area, which is going to drag some moisture up with it. And I think a lot of that's going to be going through Saturday night, overnight, and then clearing out by Sunday morning. So that's a good thing. We'll get into that in just a second here. Right now, real quick, we do have easterly winds at 10 knots, 10 gusting 12. We were up to 12 knots. Looks like it's fading. So it's a little bit up and down right now. Again, some of those lake breezes we can see here. We have north winds over Bell River, and then easterly winds over here. It just shows how that disparity is between the general north flow that's coming down. And then as we get that heat fluxing in between land masses, we see that easterly pinch through into the Detroit River, right? So that's indicative, and especially this east-northeast flow up here where you have basically heat fluxing creates its own kind of high pressure here. We have north has radial symmetry around it, east here, more east here, so on and so forth. So that really centralized over the southern portion of the lake, which is why we're getting that east flow. I think tomorrow will be a little bit more straightforward with that southeast or southeast flow coming up around it. And if we run all the available models for the Petch Island sensor, which by the way is 39 feet high above ground level, which is good. That means it's close to the optimal height for a sensor at 30 feet or 10 meters. And if we look at tomorrow's forecast, it looks like we know we have a lot of model agreement with sort of a southeast or southeast. There are some of the high resolution models, the HRRR and the WRF 3, do have it more of an easterly flow in the afternoon. So there could be a battle between what I would consider a lake breeze effect and a true synoptic flow from the southeast. And we're going to have to kind of take this one day at a time. As far as tomorrow morning, I'll have a much clearer picture on what this looks like. But right now, some of the higher resolution model, the one here in the greens, the NAM 3, right here, this is the WRF 2, 3 kilometer. And then also here is the trim. So if you're not familiar with the model suite, we do have a new one called the trim, the TRRM Tempest Real-Time Refresh Model SailFlow trim. This is AI. And so we actually have the WRF is the 2 kilometer, not the 3 kilometer, like I said earlier. So 2 kilometer, which is even higher resolution. But the trim is AI. We're watching that closely. It bases a lot of its modeling and physics off of other models. So it'd be interesting to see how this one performs in this area. Now the NAM 3 in the green down here, keep that in mind as we go forward into tomorrow, where a lot of those agreements are coming up with more of an easterly flow. So that is something to definitely keep in consideration. The good thing is that the higher resolution models do bring the winds up, right? So we're looking at anywhere from 7 to 11 knots for the race tomorrow. If anything more than I'd say 10 or 11 knots would be gift wind right around 2, 3 o'clock. So it might be towards the end of the race for that mid to late afternoon build. As we get into Saturday, looks like a little bit more of a solid southeast flow as a cold front starts to approach. And if we go back to the surface map, go here, we talked about that cold front approach. And then as we get into Sunday, and we'll talk about that, this WPC surface map just doesn't go by 6-hour increments like I'd hoped, but that's the general approach of the front, turning those winds along the aft side of the high pressure as it moves off to the east. And so that's the reason why I think we can get modest winds on Saturday. So it looks pretty good. It doesn't look like we're going to have any rain till later. As far as rain goes, let's take a look at the modeling. So I'm going to run the NAM 3 here. NAM 3 only goes out to 60 hours. So we're running into Friday morning, Friday afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock. We see 8 o'clock Eastern time, and then we see that rain starting to move up towards the area by nighttime into Saturday evening, 7 o'clock Eastern time, so on and so forth. So it looks like a lot of that rain is not going to arrive till later in the day, and then it'll pass through overnight. Now, if we look at the NAM 12, this goes out a little bit farther, but it's a little less granular on the rain. We see this about the same times here where we get into now 4-hour increments. We're looking at 06Z Sunday. It means 2 a.m. So we're 4 hours back in the summer. But a lot of that passes through by the time we wake up Sunday morning, and then we end up with drier weather, a little area of high pressure building in behind that, and then maybe some northwest over to north flow. And so that's what the models are actually hinting at as we get into Sunday, as the winds, with that high pressure to the west filling in behind that troughing or that warm front activity. Boom, here we go. We have a little modest northwest flow. So it's still 4 to 5 days out. So it's a little early to call that just yet, but we're a little more confident in tomorrow's battle being between the east and the southeast flow as far as the sea breeze or the lake breeze goes. As far as the currents, now I like to use this one. This is the GLERL, North Great Lakes Environmental Resource Laboratory, and this is a NOAA product. And I like to use this to go out to at least look at the water level time series, which forecasts out through June the 2nd. Looks like things are going to be pretty stable. Not a lot of rain to talk about to drive the currents across the lake from northeast to southwest. So it looks like things are pretty stable. No huge dips or rises in that at all. If we go back to here, we look at the 72-hour forecast, and things look pretty solid. We have to watch that current to build out a little bit farther out in the course with a half a knot. But I think closer towards Petch Island, we're going to be seeing about a knot, maybe 1.25. We'll have a little bit more information about that from our race guys tomorrow, because they know the area really well this time of the year. So I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. But this is a really good model to use for surface currents. So centimeters to the centimeters per second here, surface currents translates to knots in a different way. So what you're seeing here at 45 to 50 is going to be right around a knot, like 0.85 to 1 knot. So using the metrics back to the American models on that, as far as air temperatures go, we're going to see 69 today, 72 tomorrow, 75 on Sunday as that southerly draw starts to warm things up into the weekend. and then 79 by Tuesday. So pretty comfortable air temperatures as far as that goes. Lake temperatures, I'd probably have to run. Let's see if I can find water level for this area. I don't have it. I'll be able to find out the water temperature for the lake tomorrow though, for sure. But as far as the weather is concerned, I do believe that we're going to have some decent winds tomorrow, maybe some modest easterly or southeasterly. Saturday looks like a little bit better south-southeast, 8 to 12, maybe a little bit more than that. And then as we get into Sunday, we'll have to kind of wait and see, maybe some modest northwest. The switch up of winds, which would be impacted by the landmass upwind, possibly shadowing out some of those. So we'll take it day to day by this. We'll talk about the currents and everything. But just want to give a preliminary out there and kind of look, give you an idea. No storms or anything to worry about during the race course. All 3 days looks like pretty good days of racing each time as far as the rain or storms goes. So nothing to worry about there. But outside of that, I think I'll end this this preliminary webinar, and we'll be back on tomorrow morning. Each morning at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, we'll do an update every day. We'll see you then. Thanks, everybody. Take care.